bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome, everyone, to the season finale edition of USL All Access. A very happy Tuesday night, and welcome to the offseason. Emmett McConnell has put it together all year. Devon Kerr has tried to keep it together all year. Mike Watts here as well. Devon, welcome to the offseason. Hopefully you've found some time for personal care and, being a family man of sorts.
Yeah. How do I answer that? Walked in the door late Saturday after the final.
Yeah.
Went through the week. And basically, since Monday afternoon, as you know, and I'm very blessed to have a happy and healthy family, 3 little boys. Since Monday afternoon, Daddy Daycare has been in full effect. And I've loved every second of being around my children, but I haven't exactly had a day off yet. And I don't get one because, again, another good problem to have. We got national championships coming up right around the corner.
Indeed. Devon will continue on as the voice of Men's College Cup, as he has now for several years. I'm back to working basketball at Madison Square Garden, so we're into our side hustles this time of year. Devon, let's jump into the kind of money we don't have as we hit some news around the league as the offseason kicks off. We'll chat about the all-league teams. We're already starting to see roster announcements coming. Plenty to chat about on that front, and we will. Let's start with the big money. We start in Oklahoma City. When the energy return has sort of been this constant moving target, but it seems like we're 2 years away. They've made abundantly clear that Taft Stadium was not enough. Ironic, because Taft Stadium is home to maybe it is the most watched highlight in league history, the flip throw to bicycle kick. However, not suitable for a professional soccer team. Russell Westbrook, the former OKC Thunder player, investing in the energy moving forward. An 8-figure investment. For those who don't have money, I had to look it up. That's 10 million or more. In the Oklahoma City Soccer Stadium District. Court Jesk is running this whole endeavor in Oklahoma City. We know him from the league office for quite some time. This all hinges on getting the stadium done. Has been the way this has been described to me for a while. So, does Russell Westbrook move the needle? I would think so.
Well, I would say the money moves the needle.
Well,
I mean,
okay.
right, that's got to be the biggest thing here. Look, you and I've been discontent with the situation for quite some time. 8 years from 2014 till 2021, we saw not just the highlights that you talked about, Mike, but man, do you remember their run to the Western Conference Final in 2017? And what a freaking Western Conference Final that was. The crazies, like 375 penalties with Swope Park Rangers.
Yes.
I can remember sitting there. You and I had just called the East final with Louisville and Red Bull. And I can remember sitting there and just, I couldn't believe it. It just kept going and going. But anyway, it was John Pascarella, right, who took over. Stevie Cook was involved in that. Lee Wiedemann was the steward at the end of it. Jimmy Nielsen put them on the map. Tons of really good players. Budget was never an issue, at least not from what we heard. It was all about location and foundation, and something that you and I have preached throughout the entirety of all this that needs to be there prior to the start of play. And it's kind of backwards here. I'm okay with it. Now we're looking for it to be set prior to resumption of play. I don't care who's in the front office. That's not a knock at Court Jeske. That's not a knock at anybody that's going to be in the technical area. I care about what's on the sideline right now, what's in the background for that community to be able to maintain this organization, because all we hear from everybody is, man, they're coming back and this is going to be awesome and great. Well, 3 years later and we're still not there, at least not yet. I had a really good conversation with Cody Lorendi, OKC Energy Grade for a couple of years, 4.5 seasons or so with them, Puerto Rican men's national team player. he's turned agent, and he's got a day job, but he's got a great following in the area. And he just talks about the opportunity of players coming back in at the professional level for OKC. The money is everything. And you would think that the smarts of Russell Westbrook and what he's gone through in his athletic career, although in a different footballing world, is only going to benefit this organization.
No doubt. So Oklahoma City thinks they've got their turnkey moving forward for their soccer stadium district. Meanwhile, the news down in Miami, we mentioned it briefly last week. They are moving south. They are moving to Homestead. They're building a new 10,000-seat soccer-specific, their own stadium with the Sports Performance Hub, who we mentioned about a month ago with major news. They became a stakeholder in the club. We hinted that big changes were coming as a result. I'm not sure that that there is another name or two that may jump into that ownership fold. They are, Devin, you live in that area, not Homestead, South Florida. At least an hour drive between Homestead and Inter Miami's stadium in Fort Lauderdale. And Freedom Park isn't exactly around the corner either. They did give themselves a little bit of distance here. But either way, the whole we're at FIU, we're at Pitbull Stadium thing was not working.
No, the distance. Backtrack. I'm going to go with the positive here first. Their own spot needed, right? We just came off of OKC about that, for sure. Their own identity, I would say that's probably across multiple platforms right now, right? Whether it's the new ownership groups that are coming in, to your point, hearing some rumors about some other names that may or may not be involved. The stadium, the grounds, certainly on the field, that needs some help. I'm a little bit confused about location. And here's why. And I'm curious your take on this, Mike, living in the Northeast and specifically in the New York area. I think people view the pyramid around this country and view markets of having to be individualized for success because of the inability to maintain that. I view that differently. Now, while certainly I've experienced MLS failure in the South Florida area, I've mentioned a couple of times, growing up around the Miami Fusion when I was in high school, getting to be a ball boy for them, which was awesome. They're obviously no longer here, and even Inter Miami is not in Miami at this point in time. They're in Fort Lauderdale. I do believe that the overall stability of a club can survive in an area that has another team. Whether we're talking championship to League One, championship to MLS, MLS to MLS, I do believe the ability is there. And if you just look at per capita, number one, but also the population, like, to me, you go further south, southwest to be specific, you get further and further away from literally like any sort of town at all. Homestead's awesome. Like, the raceway's out there. I've had a blast, but it's out there. If I leave my home in Delray Beach, I'm an hour and a half on a good day. If you leave Inter Miami Stadium in the middle of rush hour, you might be talking a 2.5-hour drive. So I'm really interested to see what sort of assets they create to help the fans enjoy this whole area right now, because there's just not a ton out there, and I think that's a big ask for people to travel that far. Your thoughts, Mike, because, again, you're in the New York area, and we've seen a ton of clubs at multiple levels be able to survive.
Yeah, it to me, any distance is good distance. If you're going to work with someone like Sports Performance Hub, they tried really hard to go get every 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-old washout from the Italian 4th Division and pluck them and drop them in Miami, and it didn't work. So whether there's enough American talent there or that they're able to create an academy that's worthy of putting players overseas, and there's a couple of ways you make money at this point. And don't get me wrong, ticket sales go a long way, and sponsorship. Selling players and owning the land that you're on are still probably the two biggest levers that exist in professional sports at this point in time, or in professional soccer.
Yeah.
Miami had neither. Now they've got one. Can they do another and make this a better venture financially?
So to your point, though, and I would say that the second part of it, the academy side, that's the bigger concern for me because
Right.
of how successful Inter Miami have been, not just in the South Florida area, but I would say in the southeast portion of the country, of going and getting players and bringing them through the Central Floridas, the Georgias, getting guys that were maybe quote unquote washouts or top tiered talent and finding a way financially to reach an agreement with the clubs in the area, both MLS and beyond that, to bring them in. Having to fight that battle is much more difficult. That being said, South Florida culturally is an absolute hotbed. Still, as we're talking right now, top 5 statistically in terms of academy success and players moving from the academy either into the pros or the collegiate ranks, still top 5 in the country. So there's plenty of talent there. How quickly can you get into that and harness it, though? Because to your point, the academy has pretty much been null and void, right?
Yeah, two things on that to me. For one, speaking of the Southeast, Atlanta being home to the new national team training center is the kind of thing that I think keeps more Atlanta United talent in Atlanta, or top tier Georgia, Florida talent there, potentially. Whether that comes to pass or not, we talk about this constantly. Dempsey, right?
Yeah.
It comes out of nowhere.
Nagadocious, but I'm with you.
Sure. The more academies we have, the more high-level training situations we have,
Yeah.
the more likely we're going to find the best talent for the national team, for the professional game that we can attain in this country. And so New York has multiple academies. Obviously, look at the LA area. Orange County, you may say you're, an hour outside of Los Angeles. Now they've done a great job bringing in talent from outside their space, but you're Ashton Miles, and there are guys in Orange County that don't want to drive an hour and a half to go be a part of the LAFC Academy every single day. And I'm wondering how much talent there is that far south, where Kendall and below, pretty much, you're going to be a lot better off just going to Homestead. And if they can look after players and develop players there, that'd be the better option.
There is another side to this.
Hello.
A side that I don't agree with, at least on the academy front. There are organizations, again, in every level of the pyramid in this country, that don't view that route as a positive financial investment. I think they're short-sighted, probably uneducated in a lot of areas. But a really good example of that is Minnesota United.
Yeah.
Minnesota United and Adrian Heath, and it's changing under Eric Ramsey. And I know we're jumping here from USL to MLS, but just real quick so people understand the analogy. Minnesota United brought themselves into MLS and said, we don't care about our academy, not whatsoever. And so that people understand, the DA was dissolved in April of 2020, just after the basically massive hit of COVID. And it shook the youth landscape. At that point in time, the DA wasn't just MLS teams, right? It's MLS, there were USL teams involved, ECNL, so on and so forth. At that point in time, statistically, Minnesota United had the worst academy at every single age level that they competed in. And yet, that same team in 2019, just 4 months prior to when they dissolved it, that team was runner-up in the Open Cup. That team made postseason appearances. That team finished top 4. And for 4 straight years, up until 2023, they were the only team in the Western Conference that finished, I believe it was in the top 5 every single year, something stupid like that. I'm looking at it right now. 19, 20, 21, 22. Top 6. They were the only team in the Western Conference that finished top 6 every 4 years.
Yep.
So there is another route to success. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't agree with it. But it is also possible that Miami FC could go, we're going to build a kick you-know-what stadium. We're going to surround it with the appropriate land, and it's going to have housing, and it's going to have shops, and we're going to draw everybody here. And on game day, we are going to rock those turnstiles. and we're not overly concerned with the youth ranks.
Yep. Well, I think anyone who's listened to this show for a while knows this is an area you and I feel pretty strongly about. And that conversation's not going anywhere, including over the offseason. It is our season finale edition of USL All Access here on SiriusXM FC. Dev, before we go to break, and we'll chat about the all-league teams, which we've neglected for 2 weeks now. Transfer market, a bit of reporting about a player that came out of the college ranks. You knew him quite well before he got to Las Vegas. There's reported interest in MLS and the English Championship, among other locales. Shawn Smart, the right back at Las Vegas, you came into the year and said, this kid is really good. Like, this kid is going to have a great season. I don't want to say an outside back is the MVP of a team that went 30 points up from the year prior, but he's not that far off.
No, he was very, very good. And I think the most important thing to me about the year with him, Mike, was it wasn't just that he was good for what we had seen prior to him coming into the professional ranks. If I took Shawn Smart at the end of the 2024 USL Championship season and matched him up against the Shawn Smart that scored a goal in College Cup to help his team win a national title in 2023, I think that Shawn Smart smokes him. He was cleaner on the ball. His decision-making was better. He was tasked with more responsibility no matter where he was out on the field. If he was being inverted, fine, they gave him the freedom to do so. Dennis Sanchez said, I want you to play high. Great. I want you to mark deep. Okay, we can shift from a 3 to a 4. You know, we want to have the ability to over pivot on one side, get you high in the attack, but I need you to be a lockdown defender. And while those roles were asked of him at Clemson in 2023, they were isolated because of the talent pool that he was dealing with there. That wasn't the case in 2024. And I think just his progressional development was very, very impressive, to the point that statistically you're looking around going, only had 2 goals and 1 assist. But if you go watch his impact in games, it's not always about goals and assists. On the defensive side, to be a lockdown defender, to recognize time and space, even more importantly, he took tremendous leaps. And whether or not they keep him or not, we'll see. But not surprised about the shouts whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think this league is predicated a lot more than other places on winger and wing play.
Yeah, and one thing to add, going back to the youth and how it jumps to the pro level, recognize that with the change in the draft system, the MLS Super Draft that took place last year, it's giving college kids more of an opportunity outside of the top level. And I mean top level as in number 1 in the pyramid MLS. We see academy guys jump all the time, right? Like Bradford Jamison, for sure. We saw it with Jonathan Gomez, right? Jonathan Gomez to Louisville City before he made his jump abroad. There are a ton of examples, and certainly Orange County and Louisville have their own. But when you look at the draft change where now all of a sudden underclassmen can be drafted, well, they have bargaining power now. And they have the ability to go, oh, you want to take me in the draft? It's 2 years from the day that you're drafted. If you're a Shawn Smart and you're drafted as a sophomore, right? What would have been your senior year, let's assume you leave and go play USL for 2 years to build your status, your profile as a player. What would have been 2 years, MLS doesn't hold your rights anymore. So instead of, if you're above the college level, as Shawn Smart was, he gets to go play pro. He does it for 2 years. If he got drafted, at the end of 2 years, he owns himself. Oh, you want me now? Great, no problem. And especially when it goes to being abroad, because the one thing about MLS is MLS owns its players, basically, right? And you and I have talked about this a lot too. But Shawn Smart, I'm using him as an example because he comes from Clemson in the single season, his freshman year. He's 20 years of age, Mike. People forget that. Like, they look at Clemson, national champion, great, that's awesome. He's only 20. He's right in that window of greatness for development where a European club is not going to turn its nose down. That was one of the biggest things I had to fight when I went over to Germany. I showed up at 23 and a half, and they're like, dude, you're a senior player. Right. And I had a lot to develop, and I got to experience a ton, and I certainly got better. But there's that 3 years right there is a massive difference in conversation for a player.
Right. And I'll say this too. If it were MLS that ends up going about this, buying the rights to Shawn Smart, the number's going to be poor. The add-on is where the money might be, as we
On
saw
the
with
back end.
Fidel Barajas, right? With Diego Luna potentially in the long run, that's where the money is. If you go to the EFL, Championship, League One, whatever, that's probably more money up front, less on the back.
I can tell you here's I'm with you on all that, and just to give an example that people will understand, so it quantifies. Pop Marboy is a great example of what you're talking about. Pop Marboy, shocking, coming out of where? Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
The center back, freshman, again another phenom through there. He had offers from MLS. Numbers that, if they are correct of what I've been told, weren't very attractive. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to hand over my rights and take guaranteed money. Instead, I'm going to go get this route where I can still develop at the professional level. Some would argue even better depending on where he fell within the first team, right? And he's financially being able to take care of himself and his family. You're only benefiting yourself. The scenarios are unique for every single one. It's very, very different. But two players, one that leaves the same school, right, goes to championship, maybe he goes abroad. Pop Marboy could do the same exact thing, whether or not Shawn Smart and Pop Marboy were on the same draft status or not.
Yeah, and the other thing about Pop Marboy is you agreed to your contract with USL. Yeah, there's the rights portion of it, but also there's levers. And I've talked about this a ton with college coaches on the women's side, in part because they just abolished the draft.
Yeah.
So everyone's going, why would you go to, and I'm just going to pick a team out of left field, Houston, when, you know, in theory, they've been in the basement for so long and they don't have a coach right now. And it's like, you could have money, you can have playing time, you can have structure, you can have, but unless you're the pseudo top pick, you're not going to get all of it.
Yeah.
So you need to pick the lever you want. If you're Pop Marboy, you got more money and more playing time, and you could argue maybe less stability, but you own your future.
Yeah, and again, like you said, like you could argue, you don't know where you're ending up. Are you with an MLS Next Pro team? Are you regularly training with the first team? Are you making appearances in the 20? Like, there's a lot that goes on in there.
No doubt.
Every path, every situation, unique and different. We just talked about that with Juan Tejada, the MVP for USL Championship final last week, right? Like a D2 player who goes from a role player to a cult favorite in the Rowdies, bounces around a couple of years, and all of a sudden shows up on Colorado Springs' doorstep, metaphorically, and sends this team into raptures in the final 4 games of the season. Like,
right.
Unreal. Very real.
So real. The realist. Surreal. All right. When we come back, we'll chat about the all league teams. We've got a bunch of ins and outs from the league's roster announcements that already have been made. We'll chat a little bit about the remaining storylines for the offseason, including 4 open jobs that remain as of December 3rd to be filled for next year in a 24-team league, and a lot more. This is the season finale of USL All Access.
Let's get back to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everyone, to USL All Access on this Tuesday night. If you missed any part of the show or missed any part of our season, you can check it out on the USL YouTube page with stunning video, or, well, stunningly bad video for one of us, or on the Sirius XM app. Mike, Devon, Emmett, as always, puts it together. Our appreciation to him. All league teams. Dev, we've neglected this now for a couple of weeks. How about we get to work on it? Let's start with the first team. Some of this is obvious because the major award winners are out. Eric Dick, goalkeeper of the year, whether you agree with it exactly or not, Golden Gloves. The defenders, I've got a little bit of an issue here because we've got 6 in the 2 teams out of 8 that are center backs, but so be it. Jack Gurr, Matt Mahoney in Colorado Springs, Arturo Ordonez in Louisville, Graham Smith in Charleston. The midfielders are Taylor Davila in Louisville, Jorge Hernandez from San Antonio makes the first team again. Aaron Malloy in Charleston, and then Maxi Rodriguez in Detroit. Your forwards, Golden Boot winner, record setter Nick Marcanic in Charleston, and Wilson Harris, his understudy for the Golden Boot in Louisville. Let's start with the first team, Dev. I said at the beginning of the year, Taylor Davila leaving RGV and going to Louisville was substantial. I don't know that anyone anticipated the role he would have this year. Maybe not the role, but the extent to which he played it. Very infrequent that you see a guy move within the league and have this much of a shine up in a single year. And Taylor Davila, for me, was actually a pretty worthy MVP finalist, given the lack of stats that come with his position.
That's fair. I think the latter portion is probably the most important thing. If you go talk to any manager about the move prior to him coming to Louisville City, and certainly what his body of work was after Mike, they all would have told you how clean this kid was on the ball. I've mentioned it a couple of times, like, yeah, just because I wouldn't have him as my first choice selection in the midfield doesn't mean that he's not deserving of it. Taylor Davila's success is based upon control. And I'm not talking about with the ball at his feet. It's actually a very similar attribute that Aaron Malloy carries within his game. Because they are so cognizant of where they need to be, what that body positioning looks like, and then what not just the next move is, but the second and the third and the fourth is. That's why he gets this nod. That's why any manager, when you go and look at the big board on what the next coming week is going to be, they look at and say, how do we move him? How do we isolate him? How do we get him off the ball? Like, he's one of those guys that you go into, though it's not a Wilson Harris, right? It's not the goal scorer, the stat leader in terms of goals and assists, but every other metric that he brings in, the plus minus of how much quality he brings when he's on the field, that's why he gets this shout. Not surprising whatsoever. When I say that he's not my first choice selection, I would still have him on my team. I'm just taking Aaron Malloy for other reasons, right? But they're a different profile of player. They play the game differently, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Is there anyone else on the first team that's deserving of a specific mention here?
Well, I'm with you. I think the setup of it is an interesting one. Because of, I'm like, look, if we're going to vote, let's vote on the positions. I look at a back line, and though certainly Matt Mahoney has and can play outside back, I mentioned this on the broadcast last week. Matt Mahoney, for me, was Defender of the Year. I have no issue with them giving it to Graham Smith whatsoever. But now all of a sudden, if I just go by the 4-4-2 that are put in front of me, Kerr, Mahoney, Arturo Ordonez, Graham Smith. 3 center backs. If I jump up into the midfield, I've got 4 central players. And also Nick Marcanic's not a 9. So
I would say, as we look at putting this together, the way you vote and the way, not that we vote, we don't vote. It's important to note that we don't vote.
However, do not vote.
We don't vote. It is important.
I want a sticker,
mention,
by the way, like on election day that says
I did not
vote. I didn't vote.
I would just say it's not conducive to creating an actual team. So while I beef with it, I also don't have a better outcome, because you look around this league.
I have a better outcome.
Go for it.
I have a better outcome. Whomever you submit award ballots to, they pick their players and they have to choose a formation. So, for instance, Mike, if I give you a ballot and say you're going to play a 3-5-2, great. You get 3 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 2 strikers. And based upon the profile of those players, they're allowed to fit themselves into multiple spots. For instance, a Jack Kerr could be a wing back in a 3-5-2. Jack Kerr could also be a marking back in a 4-4-2. So he's not getting snubbed from votes in that profile of player in that situation. A center back is going to change. You open up one more in a 3-5-2 compared to a 4-4-2, right? If you're playing a 3-4-3, right? You can then play with 2 10s, but you can also get 3 strikers on the field. So whomever you're voting for, you can add or remove different identities. and then you just tally them up.
Yeah. It's a rough year for wingers as a result
Yeah,
of
like,
not right.
Look, I said this coming on. I think Blake Bodley deserves a shout. Blake Bodley and the Tampa Bay Rowdies thought he was awesome. You know, they had a ton of moving pieces this year, both through injuries and structural changes. Blake Bodley, for me, was always the guy that was right there till the end of every single game and certainly into postseason play. Blake Bodley deserved a shout in this. But when I'm looking at the setup right now, we named the first team. I mean, dude, if I move into the second team, Noah Fuson, Bruno Lapa, JC Ngannou, Elijah Winder. Outside of the fact that that Cano Smith was able to utilize Noah in a starting role 5 times over the course of the year, by the way, at wingback. That's nothing in 38 games.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 4 central players. Where are the wingers? Which, again, brings me back to, like, if we give people the opportunity to decide on what they want, you're not going to exclude as many players from the decision-making process. I think it also challenges people, Mike, mentally to go and learn a little bit more outside of their team and outside of their conference, because it's really easy to go, oh, Arturo, Graham, Matt, Jack, they were all really good. Let's put them in the defensive team of the year, right?
Right.
I think it makes you search a little bit deeper.
I feel hunted by that statement. But second team, Danny Vitiello, who I know you feel strongly was goalkeeper of the year, makes the second team as the goalkeeper. The defenders, Devin Amumensa in Detroit, Ezra Armstrong in North Carolina. They had a really strong defensive season. Popmar Boy, we mentioned earlier in the show, in Phoenix as a rookie, makes second team. Sean Tosh in Louisville, another all-league selection. You mentioned the midfielders, Fuson in Rhode Island, Lapa in Memphis, Ngannou in Las Vegas, and then Elijah Winder, the young player of the year. Okay. And the forwards were Manuel Arteaga and Cal Jennings. For one, if we were to have a wing player, now Louisville's got 5 players in here. I can tell you one of them I don't think belongs.
That's it.
To be fair, in a record kind of year, I can tell you one I wouldn't, and I'm not actually going to tell you which one I wouldn't. But if we were to have wing players and set up,
you don't want to end up on the line again.
No, pass. Ray Serrano probably is a guy. Young Player of the Year finalist. Obviously, his teammate ends up winning it. That was sort of his goal coming into the year. He would have been a very deserving winner of that award. For me, I'm not saying take out Harris, Marcanic, Arteaga, or Jennings. I'm saying if you wanted a wide player, Ray Serrano probably could have been it. Pleasantly surprised. I don't know the best way to put it. JC Ngannou, I'm very happy gets that kind of praise.
Yeah, JC Ngannou. I'll get to my other choice. I firmly agree with yours, by the way. Chris Rich, when I was talking about JC Ngannou to the head coach at University of North Carolina, Greensboro, when he's being drafted in 2023, Chris Rich talked about 2 key things when it came to JC. 3, if I include his age. His age was one of them because he was international. He was going to be 24 after the draft process and felt like a lot of people turned their heads up at that. I just mentioned to you last segment how when I went to Germany and showed up near the age of 24, a lot of people look around and going, 24, I got to sculpt this, I got to do that. Maybe we go younger, maybe we go domestic. That was a big hit on him. But his ability to just go and take over a game himself was something that we saw not only at the collegiate level, but how many times with Las Vegas this year, Mike, did you see JC Ngannou playing deep in a 6, then making a 40-yard run off the back shoulder of Valentin Noel, who inverted from the left wing to knock a great ball back across? Mm-hmm. So many a time. The knock on JC that I would probably say is still the biggest thing you want to see, which is a good problem to have, is you're looking for that final product in the final 25 yards. I'm not looking for him to put up a ton of goals and assists, but to me, he is perfect the majority of time from the top of the box, maybe even a little bit deeper because of what he can do on set pieces. But from the top of the box till about 30, 40 yards out. And then the stats start to drop a little bit. And I think that JC Ngannou's stock would really improve if he could push that a little bit. You know who was one that I was really happy to see, Mike? Bruno Lapa.
It's
Bruno. Lapa. Hey, what's up? I'm Bruno. Bruno is certainly a fan favorite of ours. You know, we've had an opportunity to cover him since he's come into the league in 2020. An interesting player, another international player coming off of a College Cup run with Wake Forest in 2019 that when he went through the draft process in 2020, he's too little, he's an international, blah, blah, blah. Thought that he got lost in the shuffle in Birmingham. I did. Maybe misutilized at times, maybe overutilized because of the lack of options they had up top. Let me rephrase that. Not the lack of options, the lack of quality and consistency, because we saw so many strikers come through and not be able to find success within that system. So it puts more on an attacking playmaker, on an Enzo Martinez or a Bruno Lapa, on a Prosper Kasim who drops in there. Him going to Memphis under Stephen Glass, it allowed Bruno Lapa to play the game that he wants to. He gets on the half turn. He gets the ability to face you, a lot less back to goal, a lot less deeper, and a lot less frustration, to all of a sudden he produces career high in both goals and assists with 11 goals and 5. I think those numbers can continue to improve, especially on the assist side of things. And you talk about guys like, I don't know if Fuson was the golden playmaker. Like, I thought Bruno Lapa had a better season. Mm-hmm. Again, not a knock on Noah, but just, you know, maybe Bruno's a guy they don't get, you know, comeback player of the year, right? Like,
right.
What I mean, he's 21, 2, 3. This is his 5th year at the pro level to now finally seeing what we saw coming out of college. It takes time, man. It takes time, and I give him credit for the dedication and also the recognition from his peers for them voting him into that spot.
So the all league teams are set. May you all go out and get very rich contract extensions. I will say this. I hate awards in general. I'm not a big fan of the voting process and the favoritism. But one thing I do appreciate, you know, this is the kind of thing that gets you paid, and hopefully they all do. All right, when we come back, a bunch of roster announcements have already been made. Earlier today, Louisville announced they'll bring back 18, but who doesn't return, including a starter or two of note, as well as a look at other teams around the league. It's all coming up next on USL All Access.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back here on USL All Access. It's our final Tuesday of the year. Miss any part of the show, it's available on the Sirius XM app tomorrow, as well as the USL YouTube page. Mike, Devon, let's chat about some of the ins and outs, Devon. Let's start with the league champion, Colorado Springs, announcing their roster decisions. Ronaldo Damas, their leading scorer, is out, although the majority of his damage seemingly from the penalty spot. Jairo Enriquez, who scored that great goal in the final, is leaving as well. Surprised?
I'm not surprised on the Damas one, as you mentioned. You know, guy still scored 14 goals this year. His 2 in postseason play, you know, the dagger certainly in the final. But his other one was a penalty. And to your point, Mike, out of the 14, 7 overall from the penalty mark. So 50% of your goals were in dead ball situations from 12 yards out. That's not what you're looking for. 7, by the way, would be his lowest total in a USL Championship season for a full year. So wasn't exactly going the way they want to. Jairo Enriquez is an interesting one to me. I wonder if that's something, maybe him going back home, if it's maybe something health related. Certainly wish him nothing but the best, but he's not a player that I would have looked at and thought, oh, they need to move him on, or he's old, or anything like that. Makes me think about the individual's wants over compared to like what the team needs are.
Right. So Colorado Springs keeping much of their team intact. Rhode Island, of course, year one. Usually that means a lot of players with option years, a lot of teams in that situation, multi-year deals. They keep the vast majority of their team together. 14 set to return, including Fuson and Williams and Dequa. Connor McGlynn, Mark Doyle among those whose options were declined. Tampa Bay has announced that the former Canadian Premier League Player of the Year and Golden Boot winner Ali Bassett is coming from Atletico Ottawa. The naming structure there, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. All right. Cal Jennings is out. Jordan Doherty is also out. Both major pieces for them. Bassett will need to replace some of those goals alongside Arteaga. You good?
Not really. I don't know how to add more to that because you just said it all. I don't like it when you steal the thunder, man.
Okay. Here's more thunder. Charleston sees Adam Grinwis announce after a decade he will retire. Chris Allen was out of contract. He's signed a new multi-year deal. Jackson Conway, Juan Sebastian Palma, and Emilio Icaza among the big names. They're headed to free agency.
All right. So just hear me out here. A bit of speculation, an idea. I don't know if it's going to happen. But I heard the Grinwis news, and I was like, I wonder if there's a possibility that they already have a target. Do you have any idea where I'm going here?
There's a couple options.
Do you have any idea about someone who has Charleston Battery ties, who just got released from their team? Steve Clark. Steve Clark is 38. Is he 38 now? I believe so.
We've seen the whole go get a geriatric goalkeeper thing not work.
Hang on. The difference is go get a geriatric goalkeeper.
Tim Howard had a great final season.
Yeah, Tim Howard had basically been out of the game, though. Steve Clark has not. I saw Steve Clark all season long and have for the past couple of years in Houston. They're going to move on to Andrew Tarbell. Steve Clark watches a ton of USL. I've chatted with him about it a couple of times. He's not a native, but I just feel like that could be a fit for them. I think you could get a solid 2 years out of Steve Clark. And 2 years for a goalkeeper in USL Championship play is certainly not a bad investment.
Yeah.
I don't know, just an idea.
Something to keep in mind. Louisville City announced earlier today they are bringing back 18 players. They picked up options on Evan Davila, Sam Gleadle, Carlos Mogel, Ray Serrano, Ryan Troutman, and Isaac Cano. They have said goodbye to Owen Dom. Damian Loss's loan ends. Dylan Maris, Sebastian Sanchez, whose dad, of course, now in Tulsa and was on loan there, and Jorge Gonzalez are out of contract. Kept the band together.
Dylan Maris, health, age.
If he was healthy, it would have been great.
I get it. Jorge, same conversation.
Yep.
He's, we say Cameron Lancaster's made of glass. Jorge Gonzalez is not far behind, man. I feel bad for him. He has had some rough injuries over the years.
Yeah.
Damian Loss. Statistically, probably not the most appealing goalkeeper within championship play. I think he made some incredible saves, had a great command of that back line, especially as a loanee where you're not a natural within that dressing room. That's a big question mark for me of what they're going to go get now.
Yep. All right, Pittsburgh, they're bringing 10 back, including Griffin, Mertz, and Forbes into his age 37 season. Biasi, Dick, Sample, all back as well. Edward Kizza, notably, is leaving. He's announced he is not in negotiations with the team. For Detroit, Lijope has announced a multi-year extension with Detroit City. The options declined. Elvis Amo, injury issues. Daniel Espeleta came in as a trialist. James Murphy, who they brought in really late, but I thought made a big impact.
And I can't remember where I heard the news from, but I feel like I've heard his name on the rumor mill ending up somewhere. He's got to be. He's so good within the midfield, cleaning the ball, and allows everybody else to do what they want in front of him. He's got to be a pickup somewhere. Even if you view him as not your first choice selection, that guy brings tremendous value into the dressing room.
He's an East kid. I would love to see him go to Hartford.
I'll say this, as quick as Brendan Burke wants to play there, I don't know if James has the pace for that.
That could be very fair. And we saw a little bit of that with Jay Chapman this year too.
Do you know where James would fit in? Call me crazy, as if they need something else. James's personality would fit into Louisville.
Oh, it would.
It would. Servant of the process, of the people, want to make the dressing room happy, want to be the company man, go about it that way. He seems like he would fit right in there.
All right. Meanwhile, Birmingham, Fernando Delgado has been transferred officially from RSL to Birmingham. He'd been loaned there previously. Oakland sees Johnny Rodriguez and Neville Hackshaw return for their first year at the Coliseum. Kai Green returns to Oakland from Monterey. Masoso, Logue among those whose options were declined. Donaciano, Diaz, Blanchett all out of contract. Lexington will see the aforementioned Cam Lancaster lead their team as they head to the championship, former record holder for goals in a year. Hartford will see Danny Barrera transition out of the team. He'll continue to coach in their academy until he finds the next step in his career. Ownership loves him. Ownership adores him. I'm not surprised that they're giving him that lifeline in the short term. Long term, it did not benefit for a few years now. Phoenix, Juan Carlos Asacar, Damian Barker-John, Fede Varela, John Stenberg, Remy Cabral, Patrick Rakowski, Thomas Angel, Lawrence Wyke, Renzo Zambrano, Alejandro Fuenmayor, and Rocco Rios Novo, all out. Wipe the slate, right?
Dear Lord. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I just mentioned James Murphy in the locker room and what he brings. Pa Moduka is looking for winners, and he's looking for a different type of identity within that dressing room that, in his opinion, he feels like those players don't have it. Not my opinion or not, because I don't get the opportunity to be in the dressing room with all of those guys. Certainly talented on the field, but they've been through some stuff, and they're going for full rebuild right out of the gate. And let's be clear, financially, they have the ability to do it.
No doubt. And look, Cabral hurt all year. On Helen Barker-John, you brought in at the end at the behest of a new coach. Fine. You're going to have to rebuild the goalkeeping position. Outside back's going to need a lot of work. The midfield's going to need a lot of work. Also, San Antonio, they don't have a coach yet, but they do have a back line. Mitchell Tainter is going back. Shannon Gomez as well.
A lot of people tried to pull the coup on Mitch Tainter to get him out of there. So he's got to know something.
Yep. You would
wink,
think.
wink. He's got to know something that he feels like this is the best destination for him. And it also makes you wonder, with the departure of Alan Marcina and stylistically how they tried to change things with the new front office company man coming in, use that word twice now, that he feels like this is best suited for him. Maybe the game opens up in a little bit more direct, like we saw in the title-winning season of 22.
And look, he's a center back, but he's also a really physical one. He's 30. This is the edge of the prime of your career.
Thanks for a reminder, Mike.
Sorry.
As I got a doctor's appointment for my knees this afternoon, and I'm not kidding. So I appreciate the trip down memory lane.
Yeah, as someone who's basically the same age as him, worthy of note. What?
You're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Boy. Yeah. All right, when we come back, we say farewell for the year, key storylines for the offseason to keep them in mind, and so much more. This is the season finale of USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access. It is the final show of the year. Mike Watts, Devon Kerr. Dev, some key storylines to keep in mind for the offseason. Let's not forget, every San Diego player signed elsewhere, and every coach landed on their feet too. So that's how I got out of Memphis. They've got a ton of big names. Naita Pickering coming off injury, Vom Steeg, Heineman, Lapa, Marlon, Brett, Armenakis, Baquero, among the many interesting figures there. Probably every guy there is going to have a chance to land on their feet.
I can tell you right now, if I was in charge of a team, I'd go grab Pickering as an investment in a heartbeat. Give me Bruno Lapa, give me Emerson Heineman, and give me John Baquero. All footballers, all know how to put the ball on the deck and move it, and would be a great asset to any team.
4 head coaching jobs remain open as we go on hiatus. San Antonio, Sacramento, New Mexico, Lexington. Fair to say at least 2 of those are basically signed, sealed, delivered already?
Yeah, from what I've heard, they're done. I do wonder what route they end up going in San Antonio.
Yeah, me too.
I just can't figure it out because of the change. And again, we just referenced the front office and keeping Mitchell Tainter there. I wonder what route they go because their relevance is a necessity within the USL Championship Western Conference. It wasn't good enough. And not surprised, by the way, we didn't really get into it. Eric Quill's departure, right? Like, they're another one that have a bunch of different avenues they can attack.
Dev, before we go, time to get sappy. Sarah Kate at the league, who puts this video podcast together every week. Thank you to her and everyone at the league office for their help. Emmett, goated. Finally, your Las Vegas Lights had a year that we're worth talking about. We're over the moon for you, buddy. Dev, any thank yous?
Thank you to Emmett McConnell as well. Also a reminder that Emmett has switched his allegiance from the Las Vegas Lights to the Fighting Ryan Martins in the Eastern Conference of Loudoun United.
Not a moment too soon.
Not a moment too soon. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to the fans, most importantly. Thank you to the players for all of your hard work and the expositions that you've put out there, the access that you all give us, coaching staffs, PRs, front offices. But the fans, most importantly, you guys make this thing turn. Appreciate you all.
Dev, did we learn anything this season?
I learned that it's possible to get through a whole year with you again.
Yeah, that's true. We did our 250th game together. That was the final. I learned that the travel schedule you have, which I experienced far more than I ever had before, is mind-blowing, mind-numbing. And while I think more will be known in a day or two, I've got a similar sort of life change that you've sort of gone through the last 5 years. I'm only going to come to understand it more. Appreciate you as always, man. This is a good tempo setter for my week every Monday or Tuesday whenever we tape.
I'm going to say one thing on the back end of that to get sappy. Can't wait for the journey even further together. I think everybody at home looks at broadcasts and this talent and that talent and whatever your cup of tea is, it's a team. I've said this off air that this is the closest thing I've ever experienced to playing, because I can have a quote unquote great game as a broadcaster, but if our producer is off, if our director is off, and specifically Mike, if you're off, like, you're only as good as the weakest link, as they say, and you just sort of seem every single time that we're together. It's not even a wink link. The chain it just continues to get stronger and stronger, ironclad, and I appreciate all the support you give me, buddy.
Yep. Believe it or not, we do love each other. So until next year, the season's slated to begin. Let's call it a week into March, give or take. We'll be back end of February. For Devon Kerr and Emmett and our entire litany of guests we've had all year, Mike Watts saying thanks for being a part of USL All Access. We'll talk to you again next season. Happy holidays. Enjoy the offseason. Talk soon. So long.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.